top of Mount Suribachi, they cheered. It gave them momentum. And the brass could see that that was helping their cause. So what they made the decision, they wanted to take a much bigger flag up there and display it. So everybody that's thinking that the first flag raising was the one we're talking about, it actually is not. The brass is going to make another decision, and they want a bigger flag to be displayed from Mount Suribachi so it could be seen from further away to further motivate the men on the ground fighting. Well, because of that decision, here's where we get a little detail, and it's an unbelievable story. Marine Private First Class Rene Gagnon was ordered to take another larger American flag to the summit and replace that smaller flag with the larger one. Okay? So, Marine Private First Class Rene Gagnon was given orders to take a second flag, a larger flag, to the summit of Mount Suribachi and replace the smaller flag with the larger one. So he went with another company of Marines with the job of raising this larger American flag at Mount Suribachi. He took another company of Marines with him, Rene Gagnon. Well, two other people went with him. One military and one non-military. Among those that went with Gagnon and that other company of Marines to raise the larger American flag at Mount Suribachi were Associated Press or AP photographer Joseph Rosenthal and military cameraman Staff Sergeant Bill Genost. Also accompanied Rene Gagnon and that other Marine company to the summit of Mount Suribachi to place that second larger flag. Did they do that peacefully or under fire? Under fire, for sure. Okay? So, Private Gagnon and the other company of Marines were to raise this larger American flag at Mount Suribachi. Along with Gagnon, two important photographers also scaled the summit of Iwo Jima with that company. AP or Associated Press photographer Joseph Rosenthal and military cameraman Staff Sergeant Bill Genost. Now, kiddos, listen. When Gagnon and the other military company got up there and Rosenthal and Genost, they had a second flag raising. That is the flag raising in which AP photographer Rosenthal took the famous Pulitzer Prize winning photograph. So once on top of Mount Suribachi, the second American flag is quickly raised to the summit, and AP photographer Joseph Rosenthal took his very famous Pulitzer Prize winning photograph, while Sergeant Bill Genost recorded it with a movie camera. So we have footage of that and a photograph. Now, this is where it gets kind of crazy, and I want you just to listen and write down what you want. 95% of Americans think victory, crowning moment of Iwo Jima. We put that flag up, he took the famous picture, we walked off the island, victory, victory, victory. Well, that is so far off, it's not even funny. The bloodiest battles of Iwo Jima are still to come. They will fight for this island for 31 more days. So those people that think that, oh, it all ended here, this was the crowning moment, are so wrong. And many Americans really believe that. They strongly believe this was the crowning moment of victory for the United States at Iwo Jima. They couldn't be farther from the truth. Fighting continued on this island for 31 more days. And some of the worst fighting was yet to come. Meanwhile, and again, write down what you want, listen, kind of a story. Meanwhile, after this second flag raising, they take Joseph Rosenthal's film to Guam, where it's developed. He doesn't even know he's got a very good... How would he know that? It happened so quick. He didn't know what he has. Well, it turns out, after they develop, it had this historic, unbelievably great picture. So it's then sent on to the United States. And 2 days after it arrives in the United States, who sees it for the first time? President Roosevelt. So kind of picture that in your mind, write down what you want. So the film that Joseph Rosenthal took on the second flag raising was sent to nearby Guam to be developed. When they saw what they had, they sent it back to the United States, and 2 days after it arrived in the United States, the president views the famous photograph for the first time. Okay? So Mackenzie, what's the first thing he wants after he sees the photograph? You're ahead of the game, but you're close. What's he want to do before he brings those 6 men back? He wants to know who they are, okay? So, first thing Roosevelt does is he orders that the 6 soldiers in the photo be identified, because his intention is to bring them back to the United States, and he wants to view them as heroes, but he wants to put them on the 7th war bond campaign. They've already had 6 war bond campaigns where they sold war bonds. He wants these guys to go around. Their military duty will now be going around trying to convince people to buy war bonds, because look, we're winning the war. Here are your heroes. They're going to come back and really make this war bond sale go, because we needed the money. Remember, this war cost us $400 billion to fight, right? Well, who would be the one that might be able to identify him? Not necessarily. Rene Gagnon, because he absolutely went up there, right? And after they find out in talking to Rene Gagnon, because he went up there, that he was actually one of the guys that held the flag, who better to identify, right? So they ask Rene Gagnon to identify these 6 soldiers. Well, the poor guy does the best he can, McKenna, but they weren't like standing going, "How you doing?" You know, with their arms around each other. You know, this was a spur-of-the-moment deal, and it lasted about 3 seconds, and they went on with the war, right? So it's going to be somewhat difficult for Rene Gagnon to maybe positively, for sure, identify those 6. Actually, he does a pretty darn good job under the circumstances. So these are the 6 men that he originally identifies as who he thinks is in the famous photo. Obviously, one of them is himself, right? Here are the others. Marine Sergeant Henry Oliver Hansen. Marine Sergeant Henry Oliver Hansen. Navy Corpsman John H. Bradley, and that will be a key thing later. Navy Corpsman. What's a corpsman? Medic. Someone in the medic. Okay? Navy Corpsman John H. Bradley. Private First Class Ira Hayes. Who's doing him for the report? Ira Hayes. Anybody that's here? Ira Hayes was a Native American. Native American. One of the few Native Americans to fight. What did most Native Americans do in the war? They were code talkers, which we'll talk about later. Okay? Private First Class Ira Hayes. Private First Class Franklin R. Sousley. Private First Class Franklin R. Sousley. And Sergeant Michael Strank. So, Rene Gagnon, doing the best he can, identifies the 6 flag bearers as himself, Marine Sergeant Henry Oliver Hansen, Navy Corpsman John H. Bradley, Private First Class Ira Hayes, a Native American, Private First Class Franklin R. Sousley, and Sergeant Michael Strank.
Is that Native American in one circle?
You see what? No, you're ahead of the game here. Now, what does Roosevelt want with these 6 after they're identified? Returned. Unfortunately, it was almost a month from the time they had the second flag raising to now, so to speak. 3 of them had been killed. 3 of them had been killed at Iwo Jima. Hansen, Sousley, and Strank were already dead during that period of time. So as Roosevelt wants all 6 of those back, he's not going to get them because Hansen, Sousley, and Strank have been killed during the time from the second flag raising to now. they didn't just have the flag rising and quit fighting. This went on for 31 more days. So he lost 3. Now, as they identify the others, or think they have, Ira Hayes doesn't think that Henry Oliver Hansen, if you look in the photo, is the guy that's putting the end of the flag into the rock to lift it up. He says, I don't think that's him. Ira Hayes looks at that and he says, you know, I do not think that that's Henry Oliver Hansen that's at the base of the flag lifting that flag up. I'm sure it isn't. So the Marine Corps does an investigation to see, because they want the right people, right? Okay? Well, after they research it more on Ira Hayes' concern, they find out that Henry Oliver Hansen was not the man in the second photograph. He wasn't in the second flag raising. He actually was in the first flag raising. So he's not in the picture. So then they have to research who indeed was the man closest to the base of the flag in the second flag raising. And then he is positively identified as Marine Corporal Harlan H. Block. So Hansen is not in the second photo. And they make that correction fairly close after the initial identifications and make the determination that Marine Corporal Harlan H. Block was the man at the base of the flag, not Henry Oliver Hansen. Ironically, both Hansen, who was misidentified, and Block, who was later identified, were killed 6 days after the photograph was taken. 6 days. Both those men killed also. Hansen and Block. Hansen, the man misidentified, and Block, the man positively identified, both died exactly 6 days after that photograph was taken at Iwo Jima. So, how many do we have left that are survived that Roosevelt wants back? Oh, you got Bradley, Gagnon, and Hayes. Now, only 2 of them walked off the island, healthy. Gagnon and Bradley. Hayes had to be carried off on a stretcher because he had shrapnel in his side. He was wounded fairly badly. So only 2 of the 6 walked off the island to safety back to the United States. Ira Hayes actually had to be stretchered off because he had been wounded by shrapnel in the side. So Hayes, Bradley, and Gagnon were eventually brought back to the United States, branded as heroes, and what did they do for the rest of their military career? They went on and sold war bonds. Now, I just happen to have one here. I got it yesterday. I found this on eBay. This is a $25 war bond that was issued on December 8, 1945 in Cleveland, Ohio, that's never been cashed in, which makes me wonder if it's worth anything after all these years. I can't imagine somebody would sell it to me for $35 if it was worth anything, but I've seen weirder things. So I'm going to take this into Gil McKendry when I go see him in the next day or 2 and see what I got here. If it's like worth $1 million, I'll take care of all of your trip to DC and reimburse you any money you spend. How's that sound?
Sounds great.
But anyway, I'm going to pass this around so you can look at it while we lecture. Dude. Now, listen to this. I want this statistic written down. So these 3 guys were involved in the 7th war bond drive, right? You know how much money they raised in that war bond drive? $26 billion. Just in the 7th war bond drive. Of the $400 billion it cost us, these 3 men, during their campaign, raised 26 of it.
Well, how can you say no to someone who was in the war?
There you go. That's what Roosevelt figured out. Now, in today's money, that would be about $347 billion in today's money. Now, here's the weird thing. That $26 million, you know what the entire budget for the United States government for everything we did in 1945 was? $52 billion. These guys raised half of the total budget that the United States government had in 1945. That's incredible. That's just incredible. That's how popular they were. And that's why Roosevelt wasn't foolish in bringing them back. What happened to all these guys? Let me tell you. Harlan Block and Frank Sousley were buried on Iwo Jima. Now remember, Harlan Block was the man that was identified as the right guy, right? that was at the base of the flag in the photograph. Franklin Sousley also in the photograph. They were buried on the island of Iwo Jima. Michael Strank was killed at Iwo Jima, but he was brought back to the United States and he lays at rest at Arlington National Cemetery. We will have a chance to visit his final resting place. So Michael Strank, who was killed at Iwo Jima, was brought back to the United States and is laid to rest at this time in Arlington National Cemetery. So, Ira Hayes, Renee Gagnon, they're going to die later as civilians. Matter of fact, Ira Hayes is going to have a horrible life. Alcoholism takes over. I mean, he just survived the most horrific thing in history. He'll take over. He'll lose his life fairly early of alcoholism. But both Ira Hayes and Renee Gagnon are also buried at Arlington National Cemetery. Both are buried at Arlington National Cemetery. And we'll get a chance to visit them.
Did you look up how much the stipend is worth?
I'm going to have to go to a bank to find out. Now, this famous photograph by Joseph Rosenthal that you see and you have a picture of won a Pulitzer Prize for photography, and it inspired an impressive statue and memorial located in Washington, D.C. that you will get a chance to see. It is incredible. It's an incredible piece of art. So the famous photograph by Joseph Rosenthal captured at Mount Suribachi on February 24th, 1945 will later be made into an impressive statue and a memorial located in Washington, D.C. You'll get a chance to see it. It is unbelievable, the detail and the size. Unbelievable. The man who designed that memorial statue was Horace W. Peasley. He designed the statue that was put up in the Washington, D.C. area. The man who designed the Iwo Jima Memorial statue was Horace W. Peasley. And the man who sculpted the bronze sculpture was Felix de Weldon. He's the one that actually sculpted the statue or sculpture that sits in Washington, D.C. That particular memorial had its dedication on November 10th, 1954, and they did that specifically on the 179th birthday of the formation of the Marine Corps. So they picked that date specifically to have the statue unveiled in the dedication. Again, that was November 10th of 1954. And it was purposely done on the 179th birthday of the formation of the Marine Corps. What special guest was there during the dedication? Think, 54. Who was there helping dedicate this brand new statue? Appropriately so, because he led Americans and Allies to victory in Europe. Later was elected President of the United States. Dwight D. Eisenhower was there for the formal dedication. Okay, that is it. Now,